Chapter 1. Billy was worried. He looked anxiously at the tiny black and white puppy sleeping in his arms. What if Aunt Kate didn't like Frisky? What if she wouldn't let Billy keep him? Billy brushed a lock of sandy-colored hair out of his round blue eyes and stared at the rosy sky behind the housetops in the distance. But he didn't notice the beautiful colors of the sunset. He was thinking about the thin, jumpy woman who had visited them 2 Christmases ago. She was Mother's younger sister, but she seemed older. Billy swallowed hard as he sat down on the back steps with Frisky in his arms. Why did Dad have to bring somebody like Aunt Kate to live with him anyway? "I have a new job, Billy," Dad had explained, "which will keep me traveling and away from home much of the time. Miss Stevens has been a good helper since Mother died, but she can't stay nights, so I had to get someone else. Aunt Kate is your mother's sister, you know. We must be kind to her." Billy sighed as he ran his hand back and forth over Frisky's smooth back. "Please, God," he prayed, "make Aunt Kate like Frisky. I don't care so much if she likes me or not, but please make her like Frisky." Billy brushed away a couple of tears that trickled down his freckled, upturned nose and buried his face in Frisky's soft fur. The sound of a car in the driveway made him look up quickly. Dad and Aunt Kate. Slowly he stood up, letting Frisky tumble down the steps. He watched silently as Dad came around the car and opened the door for Aunt Kate. Just as thin as ever, he thought, as his aunt stepped out of the car. Everything about Aunt Kate was thin from her small nose to her pointed chin. Her dark hair, pulled back tightly from her face, made her look older than she really was, and her large hazel eyes seemed too big for the rest of her face. Dad, who seemed even bigger than usual beside Aunt Kate, was twitching his nose and twirling the end of his reddish mustache, as he always did when he wasn't sure how things would turn out. Billy started slowly toward them. "Billy, dear!" exclaimed Aunt Kate, stooping over and giving him a kiss on the cheek. She started to say more, but her words turned into a little shriek. Frisky was jumping around her legs, yipping delightedly. "Oh! Oh, a horrid dog!" she cried. "He's biting me! He's ruining my stockings! Get him away from me! Quick, shoo!" "He's just a pup, Aunt Kate," said Billy, making a dive for Frisky. His heart made a dive, too. It was just as he feared. Aunt Kate didn't like Frisky. Billy knew he should help carry in Aunt Kate's things, but if he put Frisky down, he might yip at her heels again. He waited until his aunt was safely inside, then released the wriggling puppy. Picking up the suitcase that was left, he walked into the house. Billy had no sooner set the suitcase down on the kitchen floor when he heard another shriek. "Oh, that horrid dog! Take him out of here!" Billy, with a sinking heart, swooped his pup into his arms and fled to his room. "Frisky, you've got to stop bothering Aunt Kate," he scolded gently, "or she'll maybe," but he couldn't finish the sentence. Dad was showing Aunt Kate to her room down the hall. Billy could hear her voice clearly. "Really, George, dogs in the house are a terrible nuisance. They make me nervous. If Billy must have a dog, he should certainly keep him out in the garage." Billy didn't wait to hear more. Clutching Frisky tightly in his arms, he ran out of the house, across the yard, and, forgetting to knock, burst into Uncle John's cozy little kitchen. Uncle John was everybody's uncle, even though he had no living relatives in Burlingham. He was the town's handyman who repaired clocks, sharpened ice skates, painted signs, and raised strawberries. Uncle John was getting bald, had small, merry eyes and a big nose, and walked with a limp. He was washing his supper dishes when Billy burst into the kitchen. "Hi, Billy," he said, rubbing his wet hands on his pants. "Nice to have a visit from you and Frisky. Sit down." He offered Billy a chair. "How about a couple of donuts left over from supper?" Billy shook his head as he sank into the chair, still clutching Frisky tightly. Uncle John raised his eyebrows. "No donuts? Something must be wrong, Billy." Billy swallowed hard, but the lump in his throat wouldn't go away. He bit his lip and brushed angrily at his eyes, but the tears came anyway. It's Aunt Kate. She doesn't like Frisky. I know she'll never let me sleep with him. She said I should keep him in the garage." Billy buried his wet face in Frisky's soft white fur to hide his tears. Uncle John paced back and forth in the little kitchen, with his hands clasped behind him as he always did when he was thinking. Suddenly he stopped. Billy lifted his tear-stained face hopefully. Uncle John always came up with something. "She wants to keep him in the garage, eh?" Billy nodded. "If he's out there, he'll cry all night, Uncle John, and then the neighbors won't be able to sleep, and I'll have to get rid of him for sure. You remember how he cried those first nights I had him until I took him in bed with me?" Uncle John nodded. "Yes, he still misses his mother." "I have a plan, Billy, that I think will work. But first you must be willing to compromise." "Compro what?" asked Billy, puzzled. "That's a big word that means two people settling something by both giving in a little. You want Frisky in your room and Aunt Kate wants him out in the garage. Why don't you compromise by fixing him a bed in the basement? Your aunt would probably agree to that." "But what if he gets cold and cries all night?" worried Billy. Uncle John went to a cupboard and pulled out a hot water bottle. "You fill this with hot water, wrap it in a piece of cloth, and put it in Frisky's bed. He'll be so warm and cozy he'll think he's in bed with you." Uncle John hobbled into the next room and came back with a clock. "Wrap this up and put it in his box too. The ticking will remind him of his mother's heartbeat and make him feel content. And now, before you go, let's bring our problem to the Lord." Billy bowed his head while Uncle John prayed about Frisky and Aunt Kate. Was God really that interested in a 10-year-old boy and his pup? It sounded like it by the way Uncle John was praying. After the prayer, Billy felt so much better that he decided to have one of Uncle John's donuts after all. Armed with a hot water bottle and clock, he picked up Frisky, said goodbye to his friend, and ran home.